Hi, I'm Noah, 30, and 3 days ago I found out my dad left me out of his will entirely and left everything to his real son. Let me back up. I grew up thinking I was an only child, raised by a quiet, emotionally distant father and a mother who never let anyone finish a sentence that didn't flatter him. My dad wasn't cruel, just cold. The kind of man who shook your hand on your birthday, who loved in his own way, according to my mom. He owned a small but successful construction firm in upstate New York. Nothing flashy, but over the years he built it into $1 million operation. I always figured I'd inherit it someday, or at least be part of it. Instead, I got a phone call from his lawyer. Mr. Rhodes passed last Thursday. The funeral was small, family only. I flew home that same night, thinking maybe this would finally be the moment we healed something. A few kind words. A letter, maybe. Closure. I was wrong. At the reading of the will, I sat in a dark-paneled room beside my mother, who didn't meet my eyes once, and a total stranger, a tall, lean man in his late 20s, wearing a suit that looked tailored and a watch I couldn't afford even if I sold my car. His name was Lucas. I figured he was one of the junior partners from Dad's business, or maybe a lawyer, until the attorney read the next line. To my son, Lucas Grant, I leave full ownership of Rhodes Contracting, along with all associated assets and properties. To Noah, I leave my tools. Just that. Nothing more. The room spun. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lucas shifted slightly in his chair. Didn't smile. Didn't smirk. Just nodded once, like he'd expected it. Like it was owed to him. After the reading, I pulled the lawyer aside. There's been a mistake, I said. I'm his son. He glanced at me, then at my mother. I suggest you speak to your family. That's when I knew something deeper was going on. And the truth? I wasn't ready for what I was about to find. Because the man I thought was my father had been living a second life. And Lucas? He wasn't just some secret love child. He was something far worse. I caught up with my mother in the parking lot. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement as she speed-walked to her car, like a woman trying to outrun consequence. You knew, I said. Not a question. She paused with one hand on the door handle. Her back stiffened. We can talk at the house. No, we're talking now. She turned slowly, her expression tight. It was your father's decision. To leave everything to a total stranger? He's not a stranger, she said, and the words hit harder than a slap. He's his son. I blinked. I'm his son. Noah, I mean biologically. Lucas is his from before we were married. My mouth went dry. I had to steady myself on the hood of her car. You knew? All these years, you knew and you didn't tell me? She gave me a tired look. What good would it have done? You were already his child. Nothing was going to change that. Except now everything had. I sat on that curb for what felt like an hour, letting the storm settle behind my ribs. So my dad had a son he never told me about. And apparently, he'd been seeing him in secret. Long enough. Often enough. Trusted him enough to hand over the company I thought I'd one day run. But it wasn't just the company. The lawyer had said, all assets and properties. That meant the lake house, the office, the warehouses, even the damn truck he never let anyone else drive. All of it. Except the tools. He left me his rusted toolbox and probably thought that counted as a gesture. I wasn't after the money. I didn't even want the company. I'd built my own career in structural design. Lived 2 hours south in a condo I paid for myself. But the fact that he'd erased me, replaced me, that was a new kind of pain. I went back to my hotel room and tried to sleep. I couldn't. At 2:34 a.m., I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to the Rhodes Construction office, the original one old brick, barely modernized, still with his name in metal above the entrance. The door was locked, but the side window, not quite latched. I slipped inside. I wasn't there to steal anything. I just needed answers. Proof that I hadn't imagined the last 30 years of my life. I walked through the halls like a ghost, brushing my fingers along framed photos of job sites, buildings I used to visit with him, crews I'd met as a kid. That's when I found it. His old filing cabinet. Still labeled in blocky, all caps letters, personal. It wasn't locked. And tucked inside, between tax returns and handwritten ledgers, was a thick envelope labeled, to Lucas. Inside, a letter, a photo, a bank receipt, and a secret I wasn't supposed to know. The letter was dated 6 months ago. Lucas, you were right to confront me. I should have told Noah the truth a long time ago, but I didn't know how. I thought leaving him the tools would be enough to tell him I was proud of him in my own way. I know he won't see it that way, but he doesn't understand the deal I made. The one I had to make to keep this business alive. I'm sorry, Dad. Underneath, paper clipped to the page, was a photo. Faded, creased. Two men standing beside a construction trailer. One was my father, young, wiry, mustache barely filled in. The other? I didn't recognize him. But scribbled on the back in red ink was a name I did recognize. Franklin Grant. Lucas's last name. The bank receipt was the nail in the coffin. A wire transfer for $280,000, marked final installment, silent partnership buyout. From Rhodes Contracting to Grant Holdings, LLC. I sat back on my heels, my breath catching. Franklin Grant wasn't just Lucas's father. He had once owned a stake in my dad's company. That wasn't just a long-lost son getting a posthumous inheritance. That was a corporate reshuffle decades in the making. And Lucas? He wasn't here out of nowhere. He'd been inserted. Back at the hotel, I barely slept. By sunrise, I'd pulled up every record I could find. Rhodes Contracting wasn't a sole proprietorship. It was an LLC with layered ownership. Lucas had been made managing partner 2 months before my dad's death. 2 months. He'd been working behind the scenes, sliding in through legal channels. My father must have known his time was short. He had cancer. I remembered vaguely and decided to secure the company's future in the only way he knew how, by giving it to someone who had a legal claim and a bloodline connection. It was clean. It was final. And it was infuriating. I needed to see Lucas. Face to face. No more lawyers. No more letters. I drove out to the Rhodes main office, the new one, a glass and steel building Lucas had already had redesigned. The receptionist gave me a cautious look. Do you have an appointment? No, I said. But tell him Noah's here. And I'm not leaving. She picked up the phone, whispered something, listened, then nodded slowly. Mr. Grant says you can have 5 minutes. When I walked into his office, Lucas was standing at the window, looking out like a villain in a movie. He didn't turn when he spoke. I was wondering when you'd come. I closed the door behind me. You lied to me. He turned then. Calm. Crisp suit. No shame in his eyes. No. Your father lied to you. I just kept my promise to him. What promise? He walked to his desk and tapped a folder. My name was on the tab. Inside were forms, signatures, legal transfers. He asked me to keep the business alive, to protect it from what was coming. What was coming? I asked, heart pounding. Lucas met my eyes. The IRS. Fraud investigations. Audit trails your father couldn't explain. He left me the company because if he left it to you, it would have been seized within a year. He died protecting you, Noah, not betraying you. My knees went weak. Because I knew, deep down, he wasn't lying. I sank into the chair across from him, throat dry. You're saying my dad cooked the books? Lucas didn't flinch. For years. He kept it small, misreported subcontractor fees, underdeclared some cash payments, shuffled funds through shell vendors. Typical old school stuff. But eventually, it caught up. The IRS opened a case last spring. Your dad panicked. I shook my head. Why didn't he tell me? Lucas looked at me, and for the first time there wasn't smugness. Just something colder. Maybe even pity. Because you were his good son, he said. His clean one. You'd never been involved. No fingerprints, no meetings, no ownership. He left it that way on purpose. Gave you the tools so you'd have something, but nothing they could seize. He left me the company because he knew I could bury what needed burying. I stared at him, stunned. So you took it, just like that. I earned it, he said, sitting down behind the desk. You think I wanted to walk into this mess? I've spent the last 3 months cleaning up your father's disaster. Restructuring, paying off silent debts, settling vendors under the table, making sure federal eyes don't fall on either of us. You're welcome, by the way. My hands clenched into fists. You're painting yourself as the hero? You swoop in, claim the legacy, rewrite the story. I didn't write the story, Noah, he said sharply. I just read the final chapter before you did. I stood. You're not family. You're just a cleanup crew with a last name and a well-timed guilt trip. He stood too. I'm the son he called when everything started falling apart. You think he left you out because he didn't care? He left you out because he did. Because if the house burned down, he didn't want you inside. That silenced me. Because the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The abrupt changes in the company. The cash-only side projects. The tight budget, excuses that didn't line up with his actual assets. I remembered him sitting on the porch last summer, thinner than usual, staring into space like a man counting down his days. He knew. He knew it was all crumbling. I turned to go. My head was pounding. Lucas called out, just as I reached the door. He left you more than tools, you know. I paused. There's a key in the bottom of that toolbox. With an address. I found it last week. It's not part of the estate, not even on the books. I think he meant it for you. I didn't touch it. I didn't reply, just walked out. But hours later, back in my hotel room, I opened the battered old toolbox. Sure enough, there it was taped under the tray. A brass key with a green tag. One word etched on it. Briar. The address was handwritten on the back of a dog-eared photo of me and Dad fishing when I was 6. And something told me deep in my gut that what waited for me at Briar wasn't just another piece of the puzzle. It was the real reason he left everything behind. The address on the back of the photo led me down a cracked county road 2 hours outside of town. I passed empty fields, skeletal trees, and a rusted-out billboard for a long-defunct amusement park before the GPS chirped its final command. You have arrived. I pulled up to a small, weather-beaten cabin surrounded by pines, barely visible from the road. No mailbox. No paved drive. Just a path half swallowed by fallen leaves. Briar, the key tag had said. I assumed it was a property name. Maybe an old retreat. But when I stepped out of the car and walked up to the door, I saw it engraved faintly on the frame. Briar. The key turned with a reluctant click. The cabin was not what I expected. It wasn't abandoned. It was maintained dusty, sure, but not rotting. Inside was a small table with 2 chairs, a fireplace with fresh logs in the grate, and a workbench against the back wall. On that bench sat another envelope. It was addressed simply, Noah. My hands trembled as I opened it. Son, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've found what I couldn't say aloud. I made mistakes, not just with the business, but with you. I tried to be a man of principle, to build something from nothing. But somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that love had to be earned. That being hard on you would make you strong. That not saying, I'm proud, would push you to achieve. I was wrong. This place, Briar, it's the only thing I ever made that wasn't about money. I built it the year after your mom and I nearly divorced. I came here alone most weekends. Cleared my head. Thought about who I wanted to be. This cabin kept me from becoming a worse version of myself. And now it's yours. No banks know it exists. No paperwork links it to roads contracting. It's clean. Untouched. I know I didn't give you the company. I couldn't. But I wanted you to have something I built with you in mind. I know it doesn't make up for the years I spent distant. But it's real. And it's yours. Forgive me, if you can. Dad. I stared at the letter for a long time, chest aching in a way I hadn't let myself feel since the funeral. He'd never said the words to my face. Never given the hug. Never clapped me on the back after a big achievement. But this was something. I spent the night in that cabin. Lit the fire. Cooked beans from a can on the stove. Sat with that letter and let the grief wash over me not just for his death, but for the relationship we never got to finish. In the morning, I found something else. A hidden panel in the workbench. Inside was a small wooden box. Old. Locked. But the same key from before fit perfectly. Inside. Blueprints. Not for a house. For a company. Not his company. Mine. The blueprints weren't architectural. They were business plans, sketches of logos, product names, rough designs for modular housing solutions, ideas scribbled in my dad's heavy block handwriting. At the top of the first page, underlined twice. For Noah. My breath caught. It wasn't some dusty doodle. This was a full concept. Eco-efficient prefab housing, scalable construction modules, customizable layouts. It read like the dream of a man who had spent decades pouring concrete and suddenly wanted to build something people could afford to live in. Attached was a note. Short. Asterisk, you talked about this when you were 17. Said the future wasn't in towers or steel, but in smarter ways to live. I dismissed you. Called it a phase. I was wrong. This is yours now. Finish it. Asterisk. I sat at the workbench, numb. He remembered. Not just remembered, he believed in it. Believed in me. Even if he couldn't say it to my face. Even if the will told another story, this was the truth. I spent the rest of the day cataloging everything. There were mock budgets, potential investor notes in the margins, old property listings he'd flagged as ideal pilot locations. He'd even made a list of names: contractors, designers, engineers, all people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some I recognized from when I was a kid tagging along at job sites. And tucked into the bottom of the folder, one final envelope. It was addressed to Asterisk Lucas. Asterisk. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. Lucas. Asterisk, you're the one with the name on the business now, but don't mistake that for the whole story. You and Noah are more alike than either of you realize. You both inherited my stubbornness, my temper, and hopefully my desire to build, not destroy. Asterisk. Asterisk, Noah doesn't know what I've left him. He may never open that box. But if he does, and if he decides to build the thing I wasn't brave enough to start, you have one job. Help him. Asterisk. Asterisk, no ownership. No override. Just support. This is his. If you try to take it from him, you'll be the man I was always afraid I'd become. Asterisk. Asterisk, don't be that man. Asterisk. Dad. I exhaled slowly, folded the letter, and sat in silence. So that was the play. My dad had split us. Not out of favoritism, but strategy. Lucas got the company because it was a sinking ship. I got the future. And now? I had a decision to make. I could keep grieving the man who never said the words. Or I could build what he never had the guts to. The first thing I did was call in a favor. A friend from college, Jules, now an architect who'd done work for urban renewal projects in Chicago. I sent her a few photos of the blueprints. No explanation, just, can I buy you coffee and pick your brain? Her reply came back in less than 5 minutes. This is brilliant. When and where? Next, I reached out to a retired contractor my dad used to work with, Sal. He'd always treated me like an actual person growing up, not just the boss's weirdly quiet kid. When I mentioned Breyer and prefab housing, he practically barked into the phone. Finally, someone with a damn spine. In 3 weeks, I'd lined up a loose skeleton crew of designers, engineers, and builders, all people who remembered my dad, respected him, and wanted to see something new rise from the rubble of roads contracting. But I hadn't told Lucas. Not yet. Part of me wanted to. After reading the letter Dad left him, I believed he wasn't the villain I'd built up in my head. He wasn't trying to steal anything. He was trying to save what was left. Still, I needed to know where he stood. So I sent him a text. We need to talk. In person. He replied instantly. Name the place. We met back at Breyer. Neutral ground. I waited on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee and the envelope in my hand. When Lucas pulled up, I saw the tension in his shoulders before he even stepped out of the truck. Thought you might have changed the locks, he said, walking up. I handed him the second mug. Thought about it. He nodded, accepted it, didn't drink. I opened the box, pulled out the blueprints, and handed them to him. He didn't speak for a long time. Just flipped page after page, brow furrowed, lips pressed into a tight line. When he reached the last page, I handed him the letter Dad had written to him. He read it. Then again. Then looked at me. You opened it, he said quietly. Yeah, I replied. I wasn't going to, but I needed to know where you really stood. He exhaled. I didn't know about any of this. I believe you. He finally sipped his coffee. So what now? I looked out at the trees. The breeze moved through the pines like an answer. Now we build it, I said. I don't want a stake in it, he said quickly. I'll help. As much as you need. But this is yours. I nodded. Good. Because I was never looking for a partner. Just someone who wouldn't get in the way. That made him smile, a real one this time. Then I guess we've got work to do, he said. We spent the rest of the afternoon sketching out timelines on the porch. For the first time, it didn't feel like my father's ghost was haunting Breyer. It felt like he'd left us a blueprint, not just for a company, but for something better than the legacy he'd tried so hard to protect. And when we finally packed up, Lucas turned and asked, You going to tell Mom? I paused. Not yet, I said. She's still stuck in the version of him that never changed. Let's show her something different first. Because the best revenge isn't anger. It's evolution. 6 months later, we launched. Not with a ribbon-cutting ceremony or a big press release, just a modest announcement in the local paper and a soft launch on a barebones website, Breyer Modular Living. A name, a mission, and a single model home built right next to the cabin where it all started. And when people showed up to the open house, they didn't just see a building. They saw possibility. The model was sleek, sustainable, and affordable. A full home under 1,000 square feet with solar capabilities, smart insulation, and customizable layouts, all designed from the sketches my father left behind. The same ones I used to talk about as a teenager that he once called fantasy nonsense. Now it was real. We signed our first 5 orders within 2 weeks. Then 10 more. By the end of the quarter, we had a wait list and inquiries from 2 nearby counties looking to partner on veteran housing. And through it all, Lucas stayed true to his word. Quiet support. No power grabs. He handled supply chain negotiations, brought in contractors who still respected the road's name, and deferred every design decision to me. It worked. But the real moment, the one that made it all worth it, came that fall, when I drove back to town and walked into my mother's kitchen unannounced. She was at the sink, rinsing vegetables, startled when she turned and saw me standing there with a binder full of photos. I'm not here for an argument, I said. Just wanted you to see what I've been working on. She opened the binder slowly. Page after page of homes, construction phases, testimonials. I waited for her to scoff, or sigh, or make some clipped comment about vanity projects. But she didn't. She sat down, eyes on the pages, quiet for a long time. This is good, she said finally. Really good. I nodded. Dad helped design it. In secret. From the cabin. She didn't look up. Just ran a finger along the edge of one photo. I didn't know. I think he wanted to keep something just for me, I said. Something untouched by the rest of it. She swallowed. I'm glad he did. That was all. But that night, she called me. Left a voicemail I still haven't deleted. He always said you were the one who'd build something better. I think he just didn't know how to say it while he was alive. Neither did she, not really. But it was enough. And now? Now I wake up most mornings before sunrise, drive out to Briar, and walk the lots where new homes are being laid down one by one, foundation to rooftop. People call me founder now. Boss. Sometimes even visionary. But I don't care about the titles. Because I know who I am now. Not the forgotten son. Not the kid who got left the toolbox. I'm the one who turned a legacy into a future. And I built it without asking for permission. From now on, they don't get to define me. I do.